What's up, guys? This is Josh from Useless Healing, and today I want to talk about melasma. But before we jump in, as always, please like this video, show us a little support, subscribe to our channel, show us a little more support, and hit that notification bell. So every Wednesday when we put out a video, you get notified. Let's jump in. Now, melasma is a hyperpigmentation of the skin, right? You typically see it, you kind of get, it almost looks like a big birthmark. It's not a big birthmark, but it's like a brownish kind of tintish, big freckle in a sense on the cheeks. And for a lot of people, and I'll explain in a little bit, sometimes it can show in the lower part of the calves. It's like brown hyperpigmentation. Now, what causes this? Usually it happens mostly in women post-pregnancy. That's the most common, and it's way more common in women than the men. Most men, if they get a form of melasma, you'll see that browning tint in the calves. It's not a birthmark and it's not a bruise. It's a browning hyperpigmentation. Now, most of the time it's classified because, post-pregnancy, you're anemic. That is the number one reason a doctor, practitioner will say you have melasma. Now, what we know is this, that anytime you have low iron in the blood, it's high in the tissue, right? We're looking at the wrong end of the seesaw. So if we have low iron in the blood and high iron in the tissue, it means we have iron overload, right? It means we're not recycling iron. Why are we not recycling iron? Because we don't have enough bioavailable copper, which is ceruloplasmin, to activate tons of copper-rich antioxidants, copper-rich enzymes, hephaestin, ferroxidase, ferroportin, etc., to recycle iron so it can go into the blood. And if we can't recycle iron and it doesn't go into the blood, right, through the reticular endothelial system, what happens? It builds up in the tissue. Now, how does this relate to melasma? Well, it's been shown that iron overload, or iron in the tissues, or iron itself, stimulates melanogenesis, right? In that same, which is melanin, that melanin production, in the same environment with iron creates that hyperpigmentation. It's really that simple. Now, it goes a little bit deeper because if we're not recycling iron through the RES and we're not activating those copper-rich, enzymes, what happens? Well, a few things happen, of course. There's inflammation because we're not recycling iron. Secondly, what happens is we can't load iron into ferritin in the cell. And we need ceruloplasmin to do that. And ferritin should be in the cell. So if we can't load iron into ferritin to hold it inside the cell, and ferritin should be low, it should not be showing up in the blood. We can't access iron. It creates inflammation in the cell and it spits it into the blood in a sense, right? Well, if we're doing it and we're doing it a lot and it becomes quite common, you'll see your ferritin levels go up. But ferritin will start to degrade, right? Because it shouldn't be in the blood. That degradation, and along with all that inflammation, kind of essentially activates hemosiderin. Hemosiderin is a protein that will now grab on to iron. It's like a vault now, it won't let go of it. And it stores it under the skin. And that's what causes that hyperpigmentation. So it is a copper deficiency, or you could say a copper excess, a low bioavailable copper deficiency. You could say you're not recycling iron. You could say you're not recycling iron, you're inflamed, which increases melanogenesis, but it's really that hemosiderin production that locks iron in under the tissues that gives you that brown hyperpigmentation in the cheeks or in the calves, right? So remember, we always have to step back when we look at these diagnoses and say, what is going on? You can't treat the skin and regulate iron. You have to regulate iron inside the body, inside the cells, inside the system, with how we're living, with how we're eating, so we can support the system. It's not about taking a supplement or using a skincare product to focus on the effect. We have to back up a little bit and change to create change. And by doing that, we focus on the cause, which will change the effect, right? So the goal is, of course, the question is, how do we get here? Of course, with pregnancy, you're downloading tons of minerals. You download over 10% of your minerals to the fetus. That's if you go in 100%. And then you have another child, so you keep dropping and dropping because you don't know how to replenish it. Of course, chronic stress, we've done a YouTube on this, can lead to the chelation of minerals, especially copper. Secondly, birth control pill, lots of different types of medications will affect copper metabolism. Calcium supplements, vitamin D supplements, synthetic A supplements, zinc supplements, and iron supplements will blow up copper metabolism. So there's many ways that really affect copper metabolism. And a lot of the times everyone's always focusing on the food pieces, which what we do in the RTM method, and that is a piece, but you have to remove the blocking factors, right? You have to make sure you're de-stressing the system, right? Of course, we can't live in a stress-free environment. We have to build up our resiliency to stress so we can stop the chelation of minerals. Because if you don't, it doesn't matter what you eat or what you take. Secondly, we have to analyze the meds we're on. We're not saying go off meds, but of course they can play a role. We have to look at the supplements we're taking and maybe go off those because they're all synthetic, and create a better environment. Stop all these things before we start anything else to support the system. And then through the RTM method, you can use copper-rich foods like organ meats and shellfish. You can use retinol-rich foods like dairy, eggs, fatty fish, and organ meats. You can use whole food C-rich foods like different types of fruits that activate ceruloplasmin because they contain that tyrosinase enzyme to support iron recycling. But you're doing it in a strategic way to meet your metabolic needs. Why? Because when you do that, you support the adrenal-thyroid relationship. And that is key, because that relationship is a huge key factor in allowing the liver or supporting the liver to produce ceruloplasmin, which is where it is produced. So you stop and then start. You bring in the minerals, but you have to do it strategically with your food. So you not only de-stress the system, right? So now the demands being placed in the system don't exceed what the system can handle, but you're supporting the system, right? Piece by piece, you're supporting that adrenal-thyroid relationship in the stress-free environment physiologically to support the liver to produce ceruloplasmin. So now you can activate those copper-rich enzymes, hyphastatin, ferroxidase, ferroportin, so you can recycle iron and get it into the blood and out of the tissue. So you can load iron into ferritin and get it back in the cell where it's designed to be because you have ceruloplasmin, which will take time because now iron's locked in hemosider and it's a real challenge to get it out of it. So it's about de-stressing the system, or I should say stopping first, de-stressing the system, and then being strategic with what you're eating and when you're eating to really support the systems to do what they're designed to do. Now, of course, as you move through this process, there's things that need to be added, some iron chelating supplements, once that foundation is there, and then possibly blood donation to desaturate the tissues. But you never do that first because you haven't supported the iron recycling system. And when you lose blood, it's a stress, and we don't want to create more stress. So hopefully this makes sense to you. Of course, if you have any questions, put them in the comment section. Thanks for tuning in as always.